everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about what women want from their husbands, which is, of course, something that I talk about frequently, what different, each gender wants from the other, and how to situate these asks within an evolutionary and biological and psychological understanding of people, And before we get to this version of that sort of podcast, I will tell you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was on physiological variables that impact how irritable your partner is. Guess what's included? And there's over 160 other excellent episodes that you only have access to if you subscribe for $8.99 a month. Okay, so going to the topic at hand, I can do a podcast about what men want from their wives, also probably an easy layup to do that right after this. But I've talked a lot about how men want physical touch and they want physical intimacy, and that's like super, super important. You will be surprised to know that healthy, happy women who are married tend to want the same thing. They want sex. They want to have an intimate life. So you can say, how does this concord with what you've taught me about spontaneous desire? That they don't go around horny all day. Yeah, they don't go around horny all day. But, women notice if they stop having sex. Most women notice if the guy doesn't initiate for a couple of days, certainly for a week, And most women enjoy having sex. Most women have orgasms. Most women think that it's something that shows that they love each other, that they are committed to each other, and it's physiologically helpful. It makes them feel better, and it makes you feel close, and they enjoy it. They feel like a sexual entity, not just a mother, not just a worker robot. And so they also like the things that go along with it, like kissing and hugging, and the guy, feeling like they're hot. That's like a big one. And even up through menopause and after menopause too, women like to have a sex life. The majority of marriages are not sexless. I have to say this all the time in the comments on my social media where people say absurd things like the majority of marriages are sexless. No, the minority of marriages are sexless, And like 15% is like a max. And that's the definition that says it's like once a month or less, like 10 times a year. People who actually have zero sex, that's like really, really low. And of course this changes, by age, but the majority of the people listening are not in their 60s, 70s, 80s, they're not. So definitely for people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, it is rare, to not have sex anymore. It goes down, the frequency goes down, but it is an indicator that something is wrong if she never wants to have sex at all, which is why I talk about it so much. Now, in this podcast, I'm talking about what relatively normative, secure women kind of want from marriage. That's useful if you didn't see a healthy marriage growing up. But when I talk in other podcasts about, let's say, what kind of interactions predict a sexless marriage, that doesn't mean that that's the norm. That just means that I, as a couples therapist, work with a lot of people who are struggling, so I address a lot of, disordered behavior. But in this one, I'm talking about kind of like the average healthy marriage. And in that, the woman likes to kiss and hug and cuddle and likes to hold hands on walks and likes to have a sex life. Now, probably does she have the same sex drive as him? No. But she has one, and a sex drive does not mean spontaneous desire. Unless, again, you're ovulating, you're feeling particularly close, you're on vacation, or you're relaxed and cuddling in bed, which is responsive desire, by the way. If you're cuddling and laying there together, your body starts to respond. So that one still doesn't count as spontaneous. Spontaneously getting horny is not a thing that, happens constantly to women the way that it does to men. If I've not made that abundantly clear by now, then you've probably not been listening to this podcast. All right, so I led with that. Women want to have a physically intimate life of some sort. Next, they want you to be nice to them. They want you to be a kind, nice, giving kind of person. They want you to be a good guy. Women brag about being married to somebody who's a good guy, who does stuff for them, who like will take over the chores or do the chores if she's sick or she can't. Somebody who will, like, if her car breaks down, that'll be like, he'll immediately like drop the work call and come get her. If she's sick, he'll make her soup and take over the kids. He will do things that he doesn't want to do because she likes them. For example, he'll watch her TV show with her, if she really likes it, or if she thinks that there's a really good article and he thinks it's boring, he'll still read it so that they could discuss it. So if you are used to feeling very anxious in your relationship, you've probably seen a lot of manosphere content that tells you to like be stoic. Don't be stoic ever. Women hate that. Real women hate that. The reason that most women bring their husbands into couples counseling is to get the man to be more emotional, because he's so emotionally repressed or avoidant, because he was trained as a child to hate emotions, and therefore he has intimacy issues with emotional intimacy. So there is no woman who has ever cheated, for example, with a guy and said, oh, he's great. Like he never tells me how he feels about me. I mean, that just isn't a thing. Like if a woman has a romantic affair, I mean, watch a movie, about like what a woman, so the usual woman romantic movie, I mean, porn, right? So guys like, in a sexless marriage is watching porn, and the protagonist goes and gets a massage, right? And so the masseuse just jumps his bones. That's like male porn, right? You're just out there minding your own business, and then somebody wants to have sex with you. Female porn, the equivalent of that, is you're just minding your own business and somebody falls in love with you, and says all these wonderful things to you and thinks that you're the best thing since sliced bread. That's why, women's emotional affairs, can turn into real affairs, physical affairs as well, and all of that, because that's what does it for women, to have an emotionally expressive guy. It says, when men say that women want like a stoic guy, I have all these podcasts about, yes, women like emotional men. What they tend to mean is that they used to be the kind of man who would like angrily rant at his wife about like her having friends that she talks to on the phone or something, and saying that made him like really upset and she doesn't pay attention to him enough. Then he stopped doing that and she's happier. Well, yeah, I mean, when the only emotions that you express are negative ones about your spouse, then sure, she'd rather you not be emotional if that's the only emotions you have. But what she really wishes would be that you would share like positive emotions as well, vulnerable emotions. It makes me sad to think of the kids getting older. So many women come in and they're like, the guy's like a robot, does he even think about anything? Does he have feelings? It's like trying to have sex with a robot to sleep with him. So women definitively do not like robots. They want you to be emotionally expressive. They want you to say romantic things. They want you to say that they look beautiful. They want you to say that they're a good mother. They want you to say all sorts of nice things, right? And if you say that your wife has difficulty accepting compliments, I just did a little video on this, that's frequently because she didn't get any compliments growing up and her house was relatively emotionally barren. So when you are trying to generalize about women based on what your wife wants, you end up being emotionally barren. But it might be a better idea to maybe get into couples counseling and talk about that you guys aren't allowed to say things to each other. And like, what are the kids learning if every time dad says to mom, you look beautiful, she says, oh yeah, right, stop. Like, does that really teach the kids that that mom is comfortable with being a human being with a body? No, it really doesn't. And as I always say, women will work on the relationship more if the children are the motivator, and that is totally normal and evolutionarily driven because the kids are the most important thing. All right, what else do women want? The big one is, do women want men to make a lot of money? Sure, all else being equal, it would be like if you could choose to just ratchet your wife's, hotness level, up by 10%, like no harm, no foul. Why not, But like, that is not the definitive love-inducing factor for any but the most shallow possible women. and look around. Like, this is what I always say when people say like preposterous things like women only go for rich guys. I have a podcast literally just about that. Or when women say that men only go for supermodels. I'm like, literally go outside. Like, just get away from the computer, go outside, go to a restaurant, go to a mid-range, go to like go to a food court at a mall or something. You are going to see just average couples getting into their average car, go to their average house. Like, how do all the guys who have the average jobs, get married? I mean, how do the women who are just average looking get married? Like, people go to people that are understandable to them. So every woman, yeah, sure, every woman's going to be happy if her husband gets a raise. You know what? Every man's going to be happy if his wife gets a raise too. Because why not? Why would you, what are you going to throw it away? Say, oh, fuck you, job, I don't want this money. But in terms of who you're going to marry, women marry a man that they love, So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really how much money they make. It does matter if they have a job, though, because if they don't have a job, that feels strange. That feels risky. That feels like, why is he not working? Why can't he kind of get along with people well enough to keep a job? So the guy that's constantly getting fired, no, that is not something that women are going to go for. Now, in terms of like, there's other variables, right? There's like smart, funny, talented, all good, right? And any variable that's generally thought of as good in the world, women would ideally like their husband to have, but this is so variable. I mean, some women would think like a guy who's like super smart is also like, doesn't have much in common, hoity-toity, uninteresting in some kind of way, too much like young Sheldon, like whatever, or like funny. Some women like a guy who makes jokes. Some women really don't like a guy who makes jokes. So a lot of that kind of stuff is really, really variable. That has to do with like innate things that the guy has. Women do like if a man is competent. So if he can do things, that varies so much woman to woman. Like some women want a guy who could like, build a deck by himself. Some women don't give a shit. Some women would say, why the hell are you out there building a deck for 12 hours? We could hire somebody to build a deck. I don't want a deck. I want you to be hanging out with us and the family. So it's like super different. But in general, whatever the woman thinks of as like important, whether that is parenting the kids or, being able to build a deck or being able to socialize at a party, the super variable. She wants to feel that he's competent in the domains that she respects, which makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, you also would like to feel that she is competent. Only guys with super, super low self-esteem marry women that act like children, And that's the thing that happens on the internet, right? Is that you go into these rabbit holes and you talk to other guys who have super low self-esteem and they're all like, oh yeah, all my wife does is scroll through TikTok on the couch. She doesn't work. She doesn't cook. She doesn't clean. She doesn't really parent. She doesn't do anything. And then like other guys are like, oh yeah, me too, man. So then you start to think that like that's all women. What? Like that's not anything near a normal thing. It's a person who suffers with tremendous depression and probably unresolved childhood trauma, And so it's the same thing when women go into forums and they're like, oh, my husband's a bump on a log. He doesn't do anything. He's been unemployed for 6 months. He just smokes weed and games. And women are like, oh, girl, like that's men for you. No, that's a disordered guy. And that only a woman with super low self-esteem would put up with. So it's the same thing for men. So anyway, what do we have? We have that women want to have a sex life. That's what they want from their husbands, to pursue her and enjoy her, sexually and physically. You want a man who's competent. You want a man who's nice and kind and generous. And then there are very individual level variables. Oh, and you want a man who's employed. And besides that, there are many, many women who want many different things. Every pot has a cover. For example, some women really want somebody creative. Some women don't give a shit about somebody creative. Some women really want a guy who's like a real ambitious go-getter. Some women say, no fucking way. I want a guy who's at home. I do not want him gone out of the house for 12 hours. I never want him to work travel, So it's like super, super different. But what we have in common is that healthy women, okay, so the real TLDR, healthy women want love to be expressed across domains. It's funny because the people, like we talk so much about, love languages and whatever, but out in the wild, when people talk about love languages. You know what a lot of women say? Oh, I have all the love languages. I like all the love languages. Ha ha. I like all the love languages. And that's true, for a healthy person. It's like children. Children generally like all the love languages. A healthy child likes all the love languages. They like you to say, good job, buddy. They like you to buy him a present. They like you to give him a high five. He likes that you would spend time with him, and what's the other one? There's some other one. So we got words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, gifts, and acts of service. I literally had to look it up. And he would like you to take over a chore for him and say, guess what? You don't have to make your bed today because I did it. That's a healthy child, right? So a healthy woman and a healthy man is pretty much the same as a healthy child. As you get older, if bad shit happens to you, you're less and less like a healthy child because that child part of you changed a lot due to bad shit happening. Some of it is maturity and just circumstance. If you have money, for example, a gift isn't going to mean the same as if you have no money. But then again, what do you think of a guy who you hands him a gift and he's like, fuck this, I don't like this, I don't care. That's an asshole. The same thing for a woman, right? So a healthy person really is a shapeshifter, to use a erotic blueprints term. They're a shapeshifter with love languages. If somebody gives you a gift and it's heartfelt, you love it. If somebody does something for you, goes out of their way in act of service, great. If somebody touches you, good. Compliments, wonderful. And the quality time, spend time together is great. So it's a different way of thinking about it, that people they perseverate on only like one of these when they don't get any of it or they are kind of scared of other ones. So like a lot of the acts of service people say, especially the women that don't like touch, say basically like, I didn't even know what to answer on that quiz. And the only ones that resonated with me were acts of service because that's practical and I need help with practical things. What that really is saying is basically, I am not comfortable with love, and I don't feel like I get any help. I am a martyr. I am suffering. And basically, I always felt this way, like that. Nobody had my back. And it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't get helped with the housework, you ain't thinking about getting any hugging or quality time because you got too much shit to do. So there's also women in that situation. Those women are usually not the avoidant wives coupled with preoccupied attachment husbands that are jumping through hoops to do all the chores. But, there are many, many women who are in the situation that they do all the stuff. Less, of course, in what I see, upper middle class and upper class people is not the same. But there are many, 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 many people, and, data shows that women still do the majority of the housework, which I think will change. And it's changing, at the younger people are changing. But anyway, point being that for healthy, happy people, getting love is considered good. Full stop, So if you found this to be interesting, something to think about, if you're a woman listening to it and you're like, well, actually all that shit sounds super uncomfortable to me, then I urge you to go to therapy and interrogate what happened in your upbringing that made you somebody that really tries to not want anything from your spouse at all except help with the chores and the kids, because that is not the limit of what you need to, of who you are in a relationship and what you should expect from a partner. And if you're a man that feels like, what the fuck, this doesn't describe my wife, she might as well be describing, like a species of rare bird, then it's possible that your marriage is struggling and that, both of you may be in dire need of some work on seeing if the connection can be rebuilt because you've gotten so distant. And anyway, and then there are those of you who are like, yeah, exactly, this is what I want in a husband. And if that's true, then send it on to your husband. And tell him this is like me and what I want, and you are good at most of these things. All right. Anyway, I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys.